You're going to take your vine charcoal, which is this stuff. It's really light and crispy, and like I said, I'll refill that drawer so you have some fresh stuff. But you're going to lay a ruler down, and you're just going to trace it, and you're going to stop at 9 inches, and you're just going to trace all the way around. And then you're going to make a mark every inch so that you have 9 1-inch boxes when you're all done. It's pretty simple. And you can use a ruler and line them up if you want to, but I think it's close enough to just sketch that line down. All right, and then you're going to want to trace it one more time underneath, except you're not going to do the lines in between. You're just going to trace it to 9 inches, and it'll be empty in the middle. All right, so this first value scale, sometimes I label them, and I start with 0 here because that's where white's going to be, and I only get up to 8. It's 9 boxes, but starting with 0 makes it 8 right here. And what I do is I take my charcoal then, and I do the 2 that are easiest, the black and the white, because it doesn't take any mixing or any thought, and it's super easy. So the white's going to go here, the black's going to go here. And I'm just going to make sure, you can kind of cover more ground if you didn't notice when you were doing your pastel drawing, or I'm sorry, your contour line drawing. If you use the side of it, you kind of cover more ground a little quicker. And something you need to realize is that this is the most basic this is ever going to be. It's one flat shape. This isn't even 3-dimensional. So if you're having a hard time with it here, it's going to be really hard for you to do the next few steps. So take time to do this right and understand this well so that you're not confused when you do a more complicated subject like your actual still life, okay? So, and the white, because you're doing it on gray paper, it's only going to get so white. It's not going to get any brighter than that. So don't try to layer and layer and layer and layer and layer because it won't take. This paper is meant for chalk, but it will only hold, like the fibers of the paper can only handle so much. So no matter how much more you want to add onto it, it won't take it. So don't try, if you feel like it's not as the brightest white possible, it's probably fine, okay? You do want to be pretty even, and you should be able to control it in that tiny space. Like I said, this is the simplest sort of shape you're going to use. So you should be able to keep those edges nice and crisp and clean. And after you're done with the general values, you can use these charcoal pencils. There's black and white ones. Don't use these to draw with in the first place. Always sketch with your vine charcoal because it doesn't erase as well. Even though it's in a pencil form, everybody likes using it because it looks like a pencil, but it's hard to erase. You never want to start out with this. You just want to use it to crisp up those edges. So if I just wanted to clean this up, then I could use the white there to make those edges nice and crisp. And then I would do the black one next because that's the next easiest. Again, and here's the thing you want to notice. I'm going to zoom in right here. You don't want it to be like that where it's really sketchy and where you can see the paper through it. You can kind of see the texture of the paper. And you also don't want to just, the other thing that kids think they should do is just do that and then smear it, but that's still really thin. You might be filling in those fibers, but it looks kind of messy and childish. So you want to make sure, just like anything else you're going to do the rest of the term, you have to layer. You're going to get so sick of hearing me talking about layering, but it's true. It's really important. It's easier, and it looks more professional when you're done. You don't necessarily even have to press harder. You can just layer, which is going to be true for pencil as well. And I can use the charcoal pencil to get those edges a little cleaner. The last thing, really the only time you should ever use your finger when you're using chalk is just like the contour line drawing you just did. It's just to smooth out the texture. It's not to push the chalk in any direction. You shouldn't try to force the chalk around the page with your finger ever. Your finger should only be there just to smooth out the texture. So if you're going like this and doing a lot of that, that would be wrong. Okay? You don't want to push the chalk. You don't want to, sorry, you can't see that. You don't want to push it across the paper to make a lighter gray. That looks messy. So I start out with these two, the two extremes, the white and the black. And then I go to the middle one, and I do a middle gray because it's right smack dab in the middle. So I find a gray that's what I think is going to be 50-50. And it doesn't matter which one you start out with. You don't want to, whatever one you do start with, you don't want to fill the paper too much because then again, the fibers of the paper won't take any more chalk. So if I want to mix in black with this, I can't fill it up with all white first. I have to do it pretty lightly. And same with this. And you're going to go back and forth with them a lot here. And by doing that, it's going to save you a lot of time and stress because they will kind of mix themselves together. And this is where it gets harder because now you're trying to mix grays evenly throughout the whole box, and that can be really tricky. But if you notice, you know, the chalk's doing the work for me. I don't even need to use my finger to smooth that out because the chalk's already done it. The tricky part now is these edges and cleaning that up. And it's a lot easier to make that line nice and crisp when I have chalk next to chalk. So if I did this one next, then it would be easier to get that line in. So I'm going to wait. Now that I have those three done, it's really easy now for me to go, okay, 3 has to be lighter than this, but not as light as this. And it's just a smaller way to gauge it than if you just did the two extremes and then had to go, well, this is lighter than this, but darker than, well, obviously. It's just a smaller grouping. It's a little bit easier. You don't have to do it this way. This is just how I think it's easier. You can do it in whatever order you want. I just think this is easier for me. So now if I do 3 next to it, it's going to be a little bit more white. You're using black and white in every single one of these. It's just a matter of how much of each. So here, I'm trying to get lighter, so I'm obviously going to use less black than white. And it doesn't have to be a significant change, but it should be enough so that they don't look the same. That's almost too big of a jump. I don't have anywhere to go from there. It's not going to get too much lighter from there, so I can't make it quite so light. And you might get like 5 of them done and realize that you have to change a few of them because they look the same, and that's fine. That's what happens. And maybe, you know, work on the gray part. What's most difficult is getting these grays to be even. These gray boxes to be even throughout the whole box. You can definitely use your kneaded eraser also to clean up those edges as well. I don't have mine over here right now, but the tricky thing now is that these edges look really white because I'm using the white charcoal pencil. And I want the whole box to be even, so if I'm going to use this white here to clean up those edges, then I need to use the black one also. You still have to mix that gray. So that gets to be a little tricky. And it just takes a little bit of time. But what's nice about this line right here is that if you have chalk next to chalk, it's really easy to just take your finger and in one swoop, make that line nice and smooth. Versus having chalk next to dry paper, empty paper. I don't know why, it just doesn't blend as well, it doesn't smooth out as well. And then from here I know this one has to be lighter than this, but not as light as that, and so on. And then from here over I would have it darker, darker, and darker. And then underneath, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to have the same level of changes. And it's up to you how you want to start it. I would do the same thing where I have the white on one side and the black on the other. And you're going to have the same number of changes, the same amount of gradation, which is just a transition from dark to light. But now you're not going to have the lines dividing it. Now you're going to slowly change values. So without dividing it, I'm going to gradually get darker. And again, you want to make sure you're using, this is actually a lot more similar to your pastel drawing because you did have to do this to blend that one. So you're still doing a smooth change in value from dark to light. But now you're doing it without those seams. And the very last thing I would do is use your finger to smooth it out. Again, don't push the chalk because it'll just look messy and unfinished. If I were to erase at this point, you might just clean it up at the end if that's easier for you. You should still have needed erasers from Monday, so I told you to keep them. If you don't, then you probably threw them across the room and I'm not giving you another one. You will have to borrow. But you can definitely use that kneaded eraser to clean it up along the edges. I've found plenty of bits and pieces of these erasers, so I'm done giving you them. So you can definitely clean that up once you're done. But that's what you should start with. And you guys, once you do start this, it won't take you that long, and I bet I could show you the next part by the end of the hour also. We are going to use the back of this sheet, so make sure you don't, if you screw up, you need to just erase. You're just going to get one piece of paper for you to practice on. So if you do, and remember, there's 2 pieces of gray paper in your portfolio. There's this half sheet, and then you have a full sheet, and you want to be using the half sheet for this. We're going to use the full sheet for something else. So we are going to use the back, so if you screw up, you just need to erase. Don't do, and these should both fit easily on that front side. Okay, so that should get you going for a while.